Welcome back. You've seen him here before, and you're going to see him again today. Joining us again is editor of Morning Consult, Joanna Piacenza, and research fellow in polling and public opinion at American Enterprise Institute, Dan Cox. For those of you who don't know yet, the Green New Deal is a sweeping, ambitious new policy vision that aims to tackle climate change and economic inequality. It can be read more as a list of ideas and goals rather than an actual policy proposal. And here are some of the ideas that they're talking about. The U.S. should be running on 100% renewable energy, building or upgrading the nation's energy patchwork to be more efficient, overhauling transportation systems and working with the agriculture industry to eliminate pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. All of this is designed to prevent the world from warming no more than 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100 and keeping us from losing cities to a rising tide. Scientists have said in a sweeping report released last year that meeting this goal could skirt the worst climate effects, such as massive floods, expansive droughts, and irreversible sea level rise. See, this is what I'm talking about. But what does that mean to the American people? How much are we willing to sacrifice on a personal and economic level? The new climate change regulations proposed in the Green New Deal suggest costs up to $1 trillion, with a T, $1 trillion. That's according to CNN. We want to know, with the help of our exclusive daily poll from The Hill and Harris, what kind of economic sacrifices, if any, are you willing to make in order to help the environment? All right, we found that 91% of Americans say some form of economic sacrifice is needed to help the environment, with a quarter of those surveyed saying it needs to be a big sacrifice. A plurality, or 42% of all Americans, say they are willing to make some economic sacrifices. 4 in 10 Democrats say they're willing to make big economic sacrifices. The Green New Deal seems to be becoming a litmus test for 2020 Democratic contenders. Do you think this poll will support that idea, Joanna?
Well, the word sacrifice in this poll is really interesting because when respondents hear the word sacrifice, they're like, "Oh, wait, what does that mean? I don't want to sacrifice anything in my life." When you look at other polls that have gotten more specific, carbon tax, okay, tax on carbon, a tax that would donate money to renewable research, okay, renewable energy research, okay, that's something I could do. That's within an AP poll in which a majority supported different specific policies. So what's interesting about this poll is that it's very general. Would you sacrifice something? I would expect the results to be a little bit higher, a little bit more concentrated in the terms of, yes, I would sacrifice something if you actually name what that is. And I think that's important messaging for any climate change activists or any advocates.
So it's like, would you pay more? Sure. Would you pay $50 for this? I don't know about $50. I'm doing a lot.
Would you stop flying? Would you pay a tax towards some certain, nonprofit doing research? I think the more specific you can get on this issue that people don't know a lot about, the more support you're going to get.
So these are the choices that I think keep getting climate change shoved to the back of the list when politicians start thinking about what they ought to be paying attention to. Because the question becomes, climate change policy, in theory, yes, but climate change policy versus this economic policy or this thing that deals with immigration reform. And then people feel a little bit more of an imperative to focus on the more emergent issue, not the one that's 50 years away.
Right. I mean, when it's a question of the environment, no one's wholesale against the environment, right? It's sort of like being against the small furry animals. It's about the economic trade-offs, and that's where the Republicans generally say, like, we can't afford to do this. We should do this, but we can't afford to do it. So that's why I was really interested to see Pew actually found that climate change, people are increasingly concerned about climate change over the last 8 or 9 years, from about a quarter saying it's a top priority to close to half now.
Now, I would imagine that millennials, or people who are younger voters, might be a little more concerned about this maybe than people who are older, because they're going to have to live in this world that's going to be filled with high sea levels and crazy weather patterns and lots of fires and stuff, right? So we're seeing that from the younger members of Congress who seem to be taking this on more than some of the older members who seem to be a little less patient for their activism.
The other thing to keep in mind is that younger people do tend to ebb more ideologically liberal. So these are the policies, these are the issues they're going to take up with arms. But it's
We're seeing evangelicals even pick up climate change in some of these surveys. The evangelicals are even saying climate change is an important issue.
I would say as kind of GP has gone up, as general population has gone up, evangelicals, perhaps their numbers
Young evangelicals,
yes.
Yeah.
I could see that going up. I haven't seen the exact numbers, but evangelicals do tend to deprioritize this issue compared to the general population overall. But it's very difficult to get someone to financially invest in something that is very far away, that they don't necessarily experience day to day. They do experience it day to day in terms of our weather and climate, but it isn't something like the economy that they can actually put their finger on, where they can see a number in their bank account. So it's an issue that's really hard to tackle.
Well, and we have the problem of the president who will get online or go on Twitter and will say, look, there's a snowstorm and it's 10 degrees below zero.
This is a hoax.
This whole thing is a hoax.
Right, and that's the problem with an issue like this. Joanna's absolutely right, that people who don't pay attention to it or are not experts, probably haven't read these scientific reports, rely on their leaders. And on the Republican side, you're seeing the leader of the GOP, Donald Trump, coming out there saying, yeah, this is a hoax, this is a Chinese hoax. And so you're seeing a huge schism between Democrats and Republicans on this issue. We're almost at a 50-point gap. In fact, no single issue are Democrats and Republicans more divided now than climate change.
Yeah, this is one of these issues, I gotta tell you, I just don't know how it gets solved. Because all of the directional wind force of politics is against this issue getting solved. And so you don't really have something you can point to and say, hey, this right here, this particular event, scientists won't do this. They won't say, this fire is a climate change fire. They won't say, this flood is a climate change flood. They'll say, look at the trend lines of what's happening with fires and floods, and you'll see what's happening. But people don't vote on trend lines. People vote, they say, oh, there's a fire, we should go send emergency personnel to fight that fire and solve it. But I just don't see how, I don't know, this one perplexes me. But we'll get more later. Still ahead, we take a look at changing demographics and ideologies and conservatism. That's next on What America's Thinking.